Hello, this is just the beginning of the video to tell you that I am recording with braces and I have cut the underside of my tongue, so I don't actually sound like I don't actually have a list, guys. I don't. That's just I'm prefacing that. Like and subscribe, guys. I recently played and completed 2 different 10 out of 10 games, both of which have changed the way I think about games and my enjoyment of them. One changed my view on pretension in video games with Gris, and the other made me realize that you can make a fun game and genre is not just a creativity ruiner or a box definer, but can act like an artistic constraint as found in other media. Neither of those two topics are groundbreaking, mainly because the games are somewhat old and people got what I got, but I never thought that way beforehand, and Gris as a game is pretentious and easy. It would probably be considered a puzzle platformer, but the game itself does not matter. There's more a vessel for the feeling of grief. Is there a story? Sure. It is literally extra content, like post-game content extra. The main game is the feeling of the game, which is hella pretentious as a concept, especially when those things that you're being grief stricken over are these like nondescript statues. It's one of those things where like you play it and you're like, oh my gosh, everything's a metaphor, everything is an allegory, there are blackbirds that form a face in the end of the game, I wonder what that could mean. But me before playing through the game would not play the game, because I somewhat knew how pretentious Gris was and wanted to save the game to build more clout before I hate on it so I don't get too many death threats from the fandom. I strongly disliked pretension in video games. I mean, like I'm there for like a video game, not like a art piece. If I wanted that, I'd go to a museum, and even if there is like a pretentious art piece that has game mechanics, I tend to not consider it a video game. Like, it's hard to be immersed in the feeling conveyed by pretentious media when you can just slide cancel and do a section too fast. Gris gets away with this problem though, but by doing this this one simple trick. The visuals are immaculate, the vibe is immaculate. They never stop being immaculate throughout the entire playthrough. In fact, it gets more colors as you complete areas, and the game gets more beautiful, it gets better looking. Every part of the game is a painting, every detail perfect, every scene immaculate. The only possible critique one could ever make about the visuals is that if one were to backtrack, the color palette is not updated, but who is backtracking in Gris without using the chapter tool you get after beating the game, and then after that The game made me reconsider my thoughts on the subject of pretension in video games, because of how well executed the feeling of grief is in the game. It's a feeling that needs pretension in order to be conveyed properly. Gris is about profound grief of the loss of a very close loved one, and most people are luckily not going to feel that in their day-to-day life, and so it's relatable to those who've felt it and trying to explain it to someone who's not, and it's pretentious to the people who it needs to be pretentious to. And so now it has me going back and like replaying video games that I've already done that have like pretentious endings or pretentious sections that I didn't like originally, and seeing if the game gets to use pretension the way that Gris does. Or does the subject matter warrant pretension? The best example I can think of off the top of my head is the death sequence in Broken Reality. I now have to consider whether or not it is done right, and if the message it wants to convey for Broken Reality, that being that the hyperfixation on the digital world means loss of an opportunity in the physical, I don't know, is powerful enough to warrant it. Now the death sequence, instead of being this annoying thing with terrible music and bad lyrics and pretentious writing, it's now risen to the level of being mid. It's not great, but it's not automatically bad. Gris has changed the way that I thought of that game, and I thought that was kind of cool. So I'm done with talking about Gris. That's only one half of the side of the story. and where Gris was sort of like an art piece that was incorporated into game design in a way that I cannot take out like the video game aspect from the art aspect. Yoku's Island Express is entirely the opposite. It is so video game.
What is blood yapping about?